The movie begins with a space explorer named Theo Cooper waking up in jail after getting arrested for being drunk and causing trouble the previous night. After being released, his boss, Walter Anderson, tells Theo that if they had found a replacement for him in time, they would have fired him. Theo is not even allowed to go home and clean up because Walter immediately takes him to a press conference. During the press conference, Walter informs the reporters that the mission is an experiment to study how deep space travel affects astronauts psychologically in preparation for future missions. The company behind the operation, Kepler, wants to understand how astronauts will handle unexpected challenges during simulated space travel. The astronauts will be confined to an underground ship to make the simulation more realistic. When a journalist asks about the astronauts' concerns, Dr. Emily McTeer mentions that there is a risk that the isolation could cause the astronauts to perceive reality differently. Walter then introduces Cole Dvorak, an engineer who will be creating weekly videos to update the public about the simulation. Bug Kieslowski, in charge of the ship's life systems, explains that he will be conducting his own scientific experiments during the mission. When a reporter asks Theo, the mission's captain, if he wants to say anything about the simulation, he declines, saying he has nothing to add because he's hungover and just went through a breakup. Walter ends the press conference by mentioning that there will be surprises for the astronauts during the mission. During a photo opportunity, Walter reminds Emily of their agreement. Before sending the astronauts underground, Walter warns them that he will ruin their careers if any of them quit early. The astronauts enter the underground ship one by one, and Theo takes a final look at the surroundings before going inside. Afterward, they put on their spacesuits and performed a systems check to prepare for the simulated launch. Just moments after the countdown, the computer alerts the team that the payload is still attached to the ship. Walter explains that the ship will disintegrate if they don't detach it, so Theo takes a moment to think before instructing the team to adjust the ship's trajectory. The payload successfully detaches after the necessary adjustments are made. Walter congratulates the team for passing the first test and reveals that he has left gifts in their living quarters. Bug finds a notebook to write his thoughts. Cole receives adult-oriented magazines. Emily gets origami papers, and Theo receives 3 decks of playing cards. Later, Theo visits the clinic for a routine mental health checkup. Emily asks Theo about his current mood, and Theo expresses that he is feeling depressed, angry, and confused. When Emily asks why he feels that way, Theo becomes frustrated and tells her not to play games with him. Emily explains that it's part of the questionnaire, but Theo shares that the woman he wanted to marry rejected him and ended their relationship. Emily acknowledges that their situation is complicated, but doesn't provide an explanation for why she ended things abruptly. As they prepare to have dinner, Emily prepares to administer vaccines to the team. Cole raises objections, but Emily explains that being in close quarters makes them more susceptible to viruses. Cole eventually agrees after Theo and Bug tease him about being afraid of a shot. The first week of the mission passes without any issues. On day 26, the crew hears an explosion, followed by a strong quake. Emily speculates that it's part of the simulation and suggests they might be passing through an asteroid belt. However, Bug points out that the significant asteroid belt is beyond Mars. The team tries to contact Mission Control but receives no response. The computer then alerts them to the fact that the ship is recalibrating its solar power storage. Cole examines the batteries and finds no issues, leading him to conclude that the solar panels must have been damaged. Theo suggests that it's one of the mission's unexpected challenges and urges the team to conserve power. After a few days, Emily tries to contact Walter without consulting the team. Theo approaches her and asks what she's doing. Emily explains that she's trying to reach Mission Control, but there's still no response. She deduces that the lack of communication is part of the simulation. As Emily is about to leave, Theo wishes her a happy birthday. Theo recalls spending time with Emily in bed days before the mission, where they discussed whether they made a mistake getting into a relationship. Cole becomes increasingly irritable as more time passes. On day 218, Bug catches a mouse in his lab and shows it to the team. Cole insists that Bug get rid of it due to hygiene concerns, but Bug argues that the mouse is part of the crew. Cole takes the mouse from Bug and steps on it, leading to a heated argument between Cole and Bug. Theo tries to mediate, but Cole shoves him against the wall. Emily intervenes and stops the fight. In his room, Cole checks himself for bruises and hallucinations, seeing blood dripping from his nose and face. He realizes it was only in his mind and visits the infirmary to inform Emily about the hallucination. Emily suggests that Cole may be dehydrated and advises him to take better care of himself. She also notes that Cole has never spoken about his family during the mission and suggests that having connections could make the mission easier for him. Cole tries to flirt with Emily, but she rejects his advances and he immediately apologizes. When Cole attempts to upload his videos to the internet, he hallucinates again and sees a text saying, "They hate you." He also sees his childhood picture on the screen and smashes the keyboard in frustration. During Bug's psychiatric evaluation, Emily asks him about his guilt regarding leaving his son, Sam. Bug expresses his hope to see Sam before he leaves, and Emily suggests writing a letter to him. Bug is resistant to the idea, as he believes the letter will never reach his son. With only 35 days left, Bug becomes withdrawn from the crew, but Emily convinces him to leave his room. Bug spends most of his time drawing a maze on the walls and starts hallucinating about his son. He sees Sam crawling through a vent and follows him, but when he reaches the other side, Sam disappears, and Bug finds himself back in his room. On day 373, the crew hears a banging noise from above. Although they grow concerned, Theo reminds them to ignore it according to the protocols. That night, Cole wakes up because he hears a noise outside his room. He goes to investigate and finds a scary-looking man in the kitchen. Cole runs back to his room and bumps into Theo, so he tells him about the man in the kitchen. Theo goes to check it out while Cole alerts the rest of the crew about the intruder. They find the man trying to escape through the vent, but he collapses. They take him to the infirmary. Cole explains that the man got in through an access panel on the science module. Bug suggests that something might be wrong outside because of the man's condition. Suddenly, Bug collapses, and the crew panics. Emily starts feeling sleepy and takes some pills before going to her room. While the crew is asleep, the computer warns that the oxygen inside the ship is running dangerously low. Theo wakes up in the middle of the night and realizes he can't breathe properly. He urgently warns the other crewmates about the low oxygen levels. Cole gets up, but Emily refuses to come out of her room. Theo breaks down the door and finds Emily isn't breathing. He performs CPR on her and manages to revive her. Theo then goes to the infirmary to check on the intruder, but he's nowhere to be found. Cole reveals that the intruder caused a breach, allowing the outside air to mix with the ship's air. Theo points out that fresh air shouldn't have caused their oxygen levels to drop so much. Emily warns that they might start hallucinating and losing their memory due to a lack of oxygen. Theo suggests leaving the ship because Emily almost died, but Cole disagrees, thinking it's all part of a simulation. Cole gets angry when Theo insists on leaving, so Bug knocks him out. Eventually, Theo and Bug go outside through the vent and find a dark and dusty environment instead of the expected green grass and trees. Before returning to the ship, Theo instructs Bug to collect a sample of the dust for analysis. They inform the others about their findings, and Cole speculates that Mission Control moved the ship inside a giant dome. Bug reports that the dust sample contains a substance called armalolite, which shouldn't exist on Earth. Theo tells the crew to put on their spacesuits for further investigation. While exploring outside, Cole still believes it's all part of an experiment. He thinks the shots they received were drugs that made them suggestible and paranoid. After walking for an hour, they find an empty house. Inside, Theo discovers a picture of the intruder and his family. Emily finds a map with some places crossed out, except for a town called Tranquility. They decide to go to Tranquility and see if anyone there can explain what's happening. When they arrive, they take off their helmets and find breathable air. They see a man outside a diner, and Theo asks him about what happened to civilization, but the man ignores the question and invites them inside. Once inside, the man introduces himself as Zell and offers them food. Cole recognizes some of the other people in the diner as familiar faces from the press conference and magazines. Zell sits with the crew and asks if they have encountered any other survivors. As Theo keeps questioning Zell, he realizes that they don't know anything. Zell reveals that nobody knows exactly what happened. He explains that a black object in the sky released a cloud of dust and lifted him up. Zell thinks they might be the only ones left in the world. Cole notices a hearing aid in Zell's ear and suspects that Walter is feeding him lines. Theo asks Zell how the town survived, and Zell says they were just lucky. Zell allows them to stay the night, but asks them to leave in the morning. Cole decides to have a drink at the bar before going to sleep. Theo doesn't want the team to split up, so they all decide to go with him. After having a drink with the team, Cole leaves the table and starts flirting with a woman at the bar. Some people block the view of Cole, so the rest of the astronauts don't realize that he and the woman have disappeared. The crew decides to wait for Cole to return, but after several hours, he still hasn't shown up, so they go back to the diner to rest. Theo suggests that someone should stay awake and keep watch, so Bug volunteers for the first shift. When Theo and Emily fall asleep, Bug goes into the bathroom and starts hallucinating that he's in the hospital visiting his son, Sam. He asks the doctor about Sam's condition, but the doctor shakes his head, indicating that Sam has passed away. Bug screams when he realizes that his son is gone. When he leaves the bathroom, Bug sees Sam in the hallway, but the boy suddenly runs away. Bug tries to chase after him, but ends up running into Zell. When Emily and Theo wake up, they ask Zell if he's seen Cole and Bug, but Zell claims that they are the only ones who came into the diner. Zell says that they're seeing things because they're lacking oxygen. Theo starts searching for microphones inside the diner, which makes Zell tell them to go back to the ship. Theo becomes even more suspicious, because they never mentioned being on a ship to Zell. Zell threatens them with a knife, so Emily urges Theo to leave the diner. Outside, there's a dust storm, so they try to find another place to stay until it calms down. However, they get separated in the darkness. Theo ends up in the diner's kitchen, where he finds a man trapped in a small cage. The man begs for help, so Theo unlocks the cage to set him free. As Theo rushes out of the kitchen, he accidentally gets stabbed in the stomach by a woman holding a knife. He manages to stumble outside and finds Emily, who is being followed by some strange residents of the town. Emily and Theo run back to the bar to hide and tend to Theo's wounds. The bartender eventually returns and spots them, so they quickly run back to their ship before he can alert anyone else. They make their way to the house they saw earlier, where they continue to stitch Theo's wound and rest. As Emily tries to go to sleep, Theo asks what Walter said to her before they boarded the ship. Emily confesses that Walter reminded her of their agreement to end their relationship. She reveals that Walter ordered her to break up with Theo to test if they could still perform their duties despite the breakup. Theo suggests that they could have faked the breakup, but Emily believes that Walter would have known because he's been closely monitoring them. Theo argues that he would have told Emily if Walter had approached him. After some time, Emily wakes Theo up to return to the ship. When they arrive, they look for Bug and Cole, but can't find them. As Theo closes the hatch, he sees 3 men nearby and quickly alerts Emily. Theo grabs a fire extinguisher and goes back outside. Soon, Zell and the chef from his diner enter the ship to search for them. Outside, Theo uses the fire extinguisher on the bartender. Theo fights back as the bartender tries to attack him. He manages to hit the bartender in the head, knocking him unconscious. Theo quickly goes back inside and encounters the chef. They have a brief struggle, but Theo is able to overpower him, knocking him to the ground and strangling him to death. Theo takes the chef's knife and begins searching for Zell. Eventually, Zell finds Emily, but Theo grabs him from behind. Zell escapes Theo's grip by elbowing him. Theo demands to know what Zell did with Cole and Bug, but Zell insists that they are still in town. Zell places his knife on the table and tries to convince Theo to join him and return to the town together. Theo reluctantly complies and puts his knife down, but then he swiftly pushes the table towards Zell and starts punching him repeatedly in the face. Zell retaliates by slamming Theo's head onto the table and kicks him while he's down. Zell attempts to stab Theo in the chest, but just in time, Emily arrives and stabs Zell in the back. Unfortunately, Zell succumbs to his injuries and dies. Shortly after, the countdown indicating the completion of the experiment comes to an end. Walter appears on the screen, congratulating them on successfully completing the simulation. Theo and Emily look at each other in confusion, questioning whether everything they experienced was part of the experiment. Walter urges them to go outside, and they hold hands, curious about what awaits them. As the hatch opens, Theo takes a deep breath, seeing the light shining down inside the ship. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.